I think I'll
hear from him and
to Jack. Good evening. Call to order the April 3rd, 2019 regular meeting of the James City County Planning Commission. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Dowdy.
Here.
Ms. Dowdy represents the Stonehouse District. Ms. Leverins.
Here.
Ms. Leverins is an at-large member. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Mr. Schmidt, who represents the Roberts District, could not be with us this evening. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member. Mr. Kropp.
Here.
Mr. Kropp represents the Powhatan District and is this year's vice chair and will chair the meeting tonight until Mr. Haldeman, who represents the Berkeley District, can join us.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Next on the agenda is the public comment period. This is a time when anyone from the audience can comment on subjects not part of the public hearing phase of the meeting tonight. And so I will open the public comment period. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this point? Seeing and hearing no one, I'll close the public comment. And next item on the agenda is reports of the commission. However, there was no policy or development review committee meeting that would fall into this time frame, so we will skip that and move to the consent agenda. There's two items: minutes of the March 6, 2019 regular meeting of the Planning Commission and minutes of the March 18, 2019 special meeting of the Planning Commission. Consent agenda items are generally deemed to be non-controversial. However, a commissioner may pull an item for discussion or for editing. Does anyone care to pull an item? In that case, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the March 6, 2019 regular meeting and the minutes of the March 18, 2019 special meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Polster. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We now move to public hearings, and there's one public hearing for this evening, Z-19-0002, 8231 Richmond Road rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Mr. Forrest Harris of Bycast Inc. has applied for a rezoning for property at 8231 Richmond Road. The property is located approximately a quarter-mile north of the Toano Business Park and the Hankins Industrial Park. This proposal is to rezone approximately 2.11 acres from A1 General Agriculture to M1 Limited Business Industrial with proffers. The parcel is designated General Industry on the 2035 Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map and is inside the primary service area. Previously, this property received an SUP to allow for the construction of a lawn equipment sale and repair and retail sales of plant and garden supplies on the site. The proposal was approved by the Board of Supervisors on May 12, 2009, and the rezoning will nullify the current SUP. The proposed use for the application is a manufacturing and assembling of products made from previously prepared paper, plastic, metal, wood, and glass. This use is a by right use in the M1 zoning district. With the operations of this use contained inside the existing 7,500 square foot building, all noise, dust, and odor effects will be contained inside the fully enclosed building. Staff visited the current site in the city of Williamsburg and did not see, smell, or hear any exterior impacts to the adjacent properties. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with the surrounding development and consistent with the 2035 Comprehensive Plan and zoning ordinance. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application to the Board of Supervisors subject to the proposed proffers. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time, and the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff?
Normal question. Did any of the neighboring property owners have any comments or concerns?
There was one gentleman that stopped in after it was advertised, and the only question he had is what they're manufacturing, and that was the only question he had. Yep.
I have two quick questions. One, right now on the, well, we'll just call it back left corner, there's already a dumpster that's screened. Does that comply with, I mean, is
Currently,
Mr.
yes.
Holt satisfied with that? So,
yeah,
I don't believe, last I checked, I don't think there's anything additional that needs to.
No, it's screened, I just want, the proffer says it's gotta comply, so I'm just.
Yeah, if it were to
making-
get moved, they would have to rescreen or.
So,
anything like that.
and then, secondly, we want to limit delivery trucks and heavy machinery from 8 to 6 p.m. You know, just throwing it out for discussion, you know, understanding that there's a house immediately to the left, do we want to request the same of trash pickup? So as part of the proffer to fall into that same time zone, so there's not complaints from the neighbor about trash being picked up at 5 a.m. So just something to talk about, ask the applicant when they come.
Any other questions for staff? Thanks, Mr. Leininger. At this point, I'll ask whether there's any disclosures from the Planning Commission members as far as meetings with the applicant or discussions, anything like that. I'll now open the public hearing, and for the applicant, Mr. Forrest, you are welcome to make a prepared statement if you so desire. If so, please come to the podium and state your name and address, and I know some commission members have questions for you as well after your comments.
Sure. I really have no prepared comments. Some of you may have heard beforehand. We're a longstanding family business. We've run our business for 27 years. And the wood, paper, plastic, whatever, we make souvenir items. So we make all types of magnets, ornaments, keychains, shot glasses, wine glasses, you name it, all the stuff you buy on vacation that you don't want, you know, where does this come from? Well, a lot of it comes out of here. So we do all of that type of stuff. I guess a little bit of the backstory is I've been in the Parkway warehouse complex behind the auto house for the last over 20 years, and we're outgrowing the property. And my son had just decided that he is going to come on full time. So I think it's, since there will be no, it just is silly to keep making somebody else rich paying rent. So we're going to try to buy a building, and we found next building. It looks perfect for us. So we are going to, you know, we're pursuing that as hard as we can and trying to get in there. I'd be happy to take any questions or anything that y'all would like to know.
Questions for the applicant?
Would you state your name and address?
Forest Terrace. Do you want the business address or my personal address? I mean, I live in Queens Lake, so.
If you can just go ahead and give the street address. For the
105
record.
Friars Court, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23185. Sure.
Anyone else?
Just one. I think Mr. Leininger probably asked the question. I am concerned, given the business, just, you know, we're talking about putting M1 over this property, and, you know, I visited the site, and I am concerned about how tractor trailers will navigate your site, and understand, you know, for me, the just sort of long-term, you know, if you were to outgrow this spot and move to a different spot, then we've opened it up, you know, recognizing that Richmond Road's 55 miles an hour in front. I just have that concern as to how that gets navigated.
Well, right now, I guess to answer your question, I ship probably 95% of my stuff UPS and FedEx, so they come in the smaller trucks. I very rarely get the larger trucks. I did speak with Nick, the current owner of the facility, and he assured me that he has never had any trouble getting a tractor trailer through the parking lot. He said they can swing it through there. Sometimes they have to jostle a car, but he was like, we can get it in there without any trouble. And in all honesty, I would think this would be really a net plus if you're worried about traffic, because Nick is bringing in lawnmowers and riding mowers, and everything comes in big giant trucks, and it's palletized, you know, and they have to unload it. I don't bring in anything like that. I mean, Nick's bringing in the whole tractor trailers of stuff. I'm bringing in, you know, I might get a pallet every now and again, but even my raw materials, most of that comes FedEx or FedEx Freight, and they run it on the smaller trucks. So I really haven't had an issue with that, and I don't really anticipate that changing. But like I say, I would really think this would be a net gain from where y'all are now with the amount of truck traffic that Nick generates, and he's retail, and I'm not retail at all. So I think overall the traffic imprint and everything is going to be, getting a lot less, not getting more. In every category, truck and personal vehicles.
Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thanks, Mr. Forrest.
Appreciate it.
Now turn to members of the audience. If anyone would care to talk on this subject, the public hearing is open. Please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to my colleagues for discussion and/or a motion. This is a docile crowd tonight.
Move that we recommend approval of JCC Z-19-00002.
Thank you. And before we call the roll on that, any further comments or discussions from the commissioners?
I'm always caught when Tim talks about some of the far-reaching pieces that are down there, and I don't think I caught the implication for the M1 and what that may mean. I mean, I get what's happening right now, but that concern is, so I'm not familiar with what the zoning piece says for the M1 and what that really is saying for us on this piece of property, that tractor trailers at any other time can come in there, is that it?
Tractor trailers can come into the site anytime, currently as it's zoned now or after it's zoned, whether it's this potential buyer or future user. M1 is our business/light industrial zoning district, and so if you can picture in your mind, Bush Corporate Center is also zoned M1, so down here at the end of the trail and whatnot. Right. In terms of sense of users and uses, that would be, I think that's a fairly good representative mix of what the M1 could be. But it is designed to be not the heavy industrial stuff, but it does allow for some manufacturing.
Thank you.
And as a follow-on, the proffer condition that limits the M1 uses on that parcel, in a sense, makes it more of a scaled-down M1?
Every bit. Some of the more intensive, what would otherwise be by right uses for if this property ends up becoming another use later. As you all well know, zoning runs with the land, so once this is rezoned to M1, unless and until the board ever rezones it again, it will always stay M1 regardless of who owns the property. These applications are not tied to a specific applicant, so it's one of the reasons why we try to make sure that all of the potential impacts are mitigated to prevent the next use or even the one after that we don't know about yet would be a good fit. So.
And, one of my concerns when I drove the site also and looked around, and there are some residential homes. One of them next to the site has a for sale sign up, so it's obvious that that's changing. But I felt when you look at the Hankins Industrial Park across the street, the Toano Business Center a couple lots away, and the fact that the comprehensive plan supports a more aggressive zoning for that parcel, I would have a tough time arguing against it, even though I do appreciate the conditions that were in there to minimize the impact on the residential units nearby. So, any other comments before we vote on the motion? There's a motion. Mr. Holt, would you please call?
There was, and just as a quick reminder, because we've had some discussion on the motion, Ms. Leverins made a motion to recommend approval of this application with the proffers contained here into the Board of Supervisors. Ms. Dowdy?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
And Mr. Kropf?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Good luck, Mr. Forrest. That's the only public hearing on our schedule for this evening. There are no planning commission considerations. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we now move to the Planning Director's report. Mr. Holt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kropp. Members of the commission, good evening. Other than what's been printed and contained within your agenda packets, I don't have anything additional to add tonight, but would certainly be available to answer any questions you have.
You comment, I noticed the sign coming in tonight about the VDOT public meeting for Croker Road in the Norge area.
So there's a willingness to hold a public hearing if the public desires. So there's been a long-standing project on the books to do an infill piece of sidewalk and bike lane. Oh, I'm going to mess up the road name. It's the road that you turn into to get to St. Olaf. Norge Lane up to the intersection of Croker Road. And had finally gotten to a point with VDOT where they had wrapped up that design and identified funding to move that into construction. And so, as with any public project, for the larger ones, they'll automatically hold a public hearing. For the smaller projects, they'll do a willingness to hold should the public want to learn more, but the project information is already readily available with the idea that any remaining public input can be incorporated. But like I say, fortunately, we're at a point where funding's been identified and that project has wrapped up preliminary design and they're ready to move forward. Staff's really been working, as we always do, well with VDOT. I think the timing's going to work really well. They're trying to get all of that done to be able to tie into the widening of the Croker Road and all those intersection improvements that are going to happen. So that'll be quite a nice bit of improvement there at the intersection of Richmond Road and Croker Road. Filling a gap, because once you get sort of east of that intersection, there's sidewalk already there, but there's a conspicuous gap as you get closer up to Croker Road.
And there's a bus stop there in front of the Farm Fresh, so I think it's a improvement for the area.
Yep.
So the sidewalk will stop, or bike lane will stop there. It doesn't extend across Croker.
No, it doesn't. It's designed to tie into
It's
that
hilly over there,
intersection
yeah.
because with the widening of Croker Road, there'll be a mixed-use path
Okay.
and an on-street shared bike facility. So somebody will be able to, whether coming from the shopping center or coming from one of the neighborhoods down the street or coming from one of the residential areas across the street, be able to walk to those apartments, be able to walk to the library. There'll be a nice, continuous, safe path there.
Is VDOT going to do crosswalks as part of the improvements to the intersection?
Yes, and the pedestrian signal,
Great.
actuated pedestrian signal timing.
Other questions? I move to Planning Commission discussion and requests, and I'll just kick it off by congratulating Ms. Leverance becoming the chair of the Policy Committee and Mr. Polster becoming chair of the Development Review Committee. Congratulations to you both. Any other comments?
Board coverage for April?
Ms. Jack Haldeman's going to take it for April, and then he'll finalize and send out the schedule that we saw was a tentative, so he'll finalize that and put his formal stamp of approval on there. Else? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.